Welcome to episode 1 of my Honda-thon. Today I'll be reviewing in what is many ways just as big of an experiment piece as the original Gojira, released 2 years afterwards. 1956's Rodan, directed by Ishiro Honda. The first Toho... No, not the first Toho film, but the first of Ishiro Honda's movies, to my knowledge at least, to be in color. And joining me today is not Kaiju Psycho Films. He unfortunately had to bail because I guess he was busy today, but I'm pretty sure he'll still be around for War of the Gargantuas. So today instead I will be having another fellow YouTuber, a friend of mine, who is also a fellow Jacksonite, reviewed this film with me. It is Movie Buff Productions. Say hello.
Hey, Moo fans.
Moo fans? Is that your name for your fans?
Movie fans.
Oh, it sounded like you said Moo fans. Alrighty. So yes, indeed.
Is my audio good?
I'm not sure. Anybody in the comments, tell us how good his audio is. If it's bad, I'll turn up the volume. If it's fine, I'll just leave it the way it is. And if it's really bad, I have a speaker, so I could just plug that up. So. Oh, KPF is here. He's commenting my review. Rodan was good. The fact that he comes out of the ground is fucking awesome. And I'll be ready for War of the Gargantuas. And he also says, apparently you sound fine.
Alright. Sounds good.
Sounds good to me. Alrighty, so before I get into it, what is your history with Rodan?
Rodan specifically, or the actual
film,
kaiju,
whatever you like.
Well, I first watched Rodan on Netflix a few years ago when it was still on Netflix.
What cut was it?
American.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, and then I watched Rodan for the second time along with Mothra on Crackle. And
when they still had a whole bunch of kaiju movies.
Yeah, once again it was still American, and this time I watched it on DVD on this really shitty kind of bootleg, but not really DVD.
Yeah, it was horribly pan and scanned, and it just looked like total crap.
And it came in a Terror of Mechagodzilla DVD case with a scrap of paper that had Rodan written on it with marker taped on it.
God damn, the struggle truly is real. So what's your history with Rodan himself, the kaiju itself?
Well, I first saw Rodan in Godzilla Final Wars.
Ah.
Yeah, back when Blockbuster Video was still around in my local area, they didn't have every Godzilla movie. They had very few. They only had Godzilla 2000, Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and Godzilla Final Wars.
Yeah, I remember my local Blockbuster had like a very few of the Showa series, none of the Heisei series, and a decent majority of the Millennium... Actually, no, they had all the Millennium movies for some reason. The one that was the... okay, go ahead.
I wish I was older, so that way I was able to appreciate Blockbuster Video a lot earlier. Because it went out of business when I was like 8 fucking years old. And like,
went out of business when I was 12 or 13, so I feel your pain. Yeah. I miss the days of Blockbuster.
Blockbuster needs a revival. Desperately needs a revival.
Sadly, I highly doubt it's going to happen. But yeah, I definitely do agree. So anyway,
some people do like private video stores out of their homes, out of their basements, They like rent them out to like local townspeople. But
it's not a bad
nobody
idea.
does that in my neighborhood, you know.
So anyway, your more on your history with Rodan.
Yes. I first saw him in Godzilla, Final Wars, and he didn't really have a big part. Like, he destroyed New York in that movie, and he was annihilated in like 5 minutes, along with Anguirus and King Caesar.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes in Final Wars. A lot of that has to do with the music.
Final Wars has great music.
I know, right?
Yeah, I should get the soundtrack.
Though it's a shame there's no Akira Ifukube music cues in that film, but whatever.
Well, the opening scene did, like, not.
Oh yeah, that is true. But outside of that, there's no other Akira Ifukube.
Yeah,
tracks.
It was an American dude that did the music score for that movie.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name, but it definitely does like sound very American.
Keith Emerson or something like that. Keith Emerson.
I'd look it up, but we're getting a little off topic. So anyway, my history with Rodan is a little more in depth. The first film that I ever saw Rodan in was Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 from '93. It was that was it. Not counting stock footage of Rodan in Godzilla vs. Gigan. My first experience with the character of Rodan was in Mechagodzilla 2, and at the time and for a long time, that was my favorite version of Rodan. Because I just utterly loved that film as a kid. Still do. Then I was exposed to the internet at around the age of 10, and I started researching Godzilla, and I started looking up Godzilla monsters, and one of them, of course, was Rodan. And I discovered that he has his own film. It was from 1956. And then I watched James Rolfe's Godzilla Thon, and of course he mentioned Rodan's film as well as Mothra and Varan's in I think it was the second episode of Godzilla Thon. Then a few years later, when I was introduced to Amazon.com, I discovered the double pack of Rodan and War of the Gargantuas back when it was still in print. It was like $10. Oh, I miss those days. And so I purchased it for Christmas along with King Kong Escapes. King Kong Escapes. I'm going to have so much fun with that movie. And the first cut of the movie I watched actually was the American version. It was the one and only time I've ever watched the American version of Rodan. At the time, I thought it was kind of fun. And a few months later, I finally decided to sit down and watch. I actually kind of bought this double pack mainly for War of the Gargantuas, but I'll get to that when I get around to reviewing War of the Gargantuas. Oh boy. And also a couple years ago, I did also watch this documentary on the disc called "Bringing Godzilla Down to Size." If anybody has not seen this documentary, I highly do recommend you track it down. It's very, very insightful and informative on the history of Showa-era Toho. And
is it one of them Bill's Kitchen documentaries?
No, it's longer than that. It's actually like an hour and 10 minutes long. Though I do like those Bill Kitchen documentaries. They're pretty fun. So anyway, I watched the Japanese version of the film. Actually, no, I don't think it was a few months. I think it was a couple of years later. I watched the Japanese version after Adam Noyes did his review of Rodan for his Ishiro Honda-thon. And that got me curious, and so I checked out the Japanese version. And honestly, I was very pleasantly surprised. I do heavily enjoy this film. Unfortunately, I don't think it's quite one of my favorite kaiju movies anymore because there was a couple problems in this movie that really stuck out to me on this most recent rewatching. And by the way, both me and Movie Buff Productions just got done watching the film like a half hour before we started this video. So I've watched the Japanese cut 3 times of Rodan. I've watched the American cut only once. He's seen nothing but the American version. You need to rectify that any way that you can. You so desperately need to rectify that. I mean, get George Takei's "Oh my" voice out of. Yes, George Takei does the voicing for the English dub, just like in the American version of Godzilla Raids Again. Banana oil. Alrighty, so that's my history with Rodan. Do you want a tag team discussing the plot, or you just want me to do it?
I guess we can tag team.
Alrighty, I'll start for a little bit. Okay, so the film begins in a small mining village outside is it a coal mine? Yeah, I think it's a coal.
It's a mining community. Where everyone that lives there, like, that's all they do. They work in this mine.
Yeah, but what type of mine is it? Is it a coal mine or like?
Yeah,
I think it was a coal mine.
Yes, it's coal. Yeah, it's coal mine.
Okay, that's what I thought. And one day it turns out there are it's called Kitamatsu on the southern Japanese island of Kyushu. I think that's how you pronounce it. A couple of miners have gone missing, and the 2 men, apparently Goro and Yoshi are their names, had gotten to a bit of a fight the previous day, and they entered the mine to start their shift, and the shaft had flooded with water inexplicably shortly after. The foreman, actually no, he's a tunneling and safety engineer at the mine named Shigeru Kawamura, played by the wonderful Kenji Sahara, this being his first lead role. Not his first kaiju movie, that was the original Godzilla, but this is the first movie where he was top billing. Sorry, my face itches. Shigeru and a few other guys go down to the mine to see what's going on, and they find a nasty discovery, and that is Yoshi's dead body, with heavy lacerations all over him. They get back to the surface, and a doctor examines Yoshi and discovers the cause of death was deep gashes caused by an abnormally sharp object, and apparently in the subs it specifically states it was a nasty head wound by something inexplicably sharp. When this happens, some of the miners and their families discuss that maybe it was Goro because they got into a fight before they went down to the shift. They went down to the mine, and Goro just wanted to finish some unfinished stuff, and stuff happened. Shigeru is clearly kind of shaken by this because his fiancée Kiyo, played by Yumi Shirakawa, is also the sister of Goro. 2 local miners and a cop who are stationed at the mine. They are stationed outside the mine just before the water line of the flooded shaft. They hear a splash inside the mine, and they decide to venture inside and investigate. All 3 are then attacked and killed by something underneath the water. The 3 bodies are soon recovered and looked over, and the cause of death is deduced to be the same as Yoshi. Let's see.
I would like to point out that in the English dubbing, the first 5 minutes is stock footage of American bomb testing.
Oh yeah, that's right. Of course.
Yeah.
It was the 50s, all right. Well, it's actually kind of surprising that the American version was released the very next year in 1957, which the reason I say that's surprising is because for some of these Toho movies, when they were released in the States, sometimes it would take years for them to come over. Like, World of Gargantuas, for example, was released in 1966, came out in the States in 1970. Just why?
Godzilla Raids Again was released in 55, but it took all the way to 59.
Yeah, that's right, for Gigantus to come out. So anyway, after the three men are recovered and examined, the widow of one of these slain guys, Shigeru and Kiro, after a small incident with the widow, she thinks that Kyo had something to do with convincing Goro to possibly kill her husband, and she just goes kind of nuts. Kyo and Shigeru are suddenly attacked by an insectoid-like creature resembling a gigantic dragonfly larva, which turns out to be the Meganulon at Kyo's home.
I would like to point out that Meganulon returns for Godzilla vs. Mechagoras.
Yeah, that's right, too. This is one of only 2 appearances Meganulon has in all of Toho's kaiju films. First one here, and it gets a massive redesign and reappears again in Godzilla vs. Mechagoras. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in my Godzilla vs. Mechagoras review, but oh well. So Shigeru and Kyo manage to get away, and the police start hunting this creature. However, in trying to kill it, 2 cops are snagged by its pincers, and they are ripped to shit, and the Meganulon seemingly falls to its death. Actually, no, it doesn't. It kills 2 police officers, falls down a big ledge, and then escapes back into the mine. And when the police and Shigeru reach the officers, they discover their wounds match the wounds of the murdered. And there's a little scene after that where the doctor says, "This thing is the killer," leading me to scream at the screen, "Duh!" You want to take over for a little bit?
Oh boy, I didn't memorize every single movie.
Well, keep in mind, I also admittedly do have the Wikipedia page just to help me with some cliff notes.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go by memory. I don't know how much I am skipping at this point. Some people are like near this cliff or volcano, and where some police officers are looking around, and they find Goro, I believe, at the bottom of this pit, and he's been crawling around.
No, that's later in the film. That was Shigeru. After the Meganulon escapes into the mine, Shigeru and a group of the police go back inside the mine to confront the Meganulon and see if they can kill it, also attempt to find Goro, dead or alive.
Oh yeah, that's when they use the mine carts.
Yeah,
to,
they do. They
crush.
Yeah, they let loose a whole big line of rail carts because they find that their bullets seemingly have no effect on the Meganulon, probably due to its armored shell. So they let loose a whole bunch of coal carts, and they smash into the Meganulon, seemingly kill it. But it is then, after that, when they discovered that there's more Meganulon in there. And unfortunately, there's also a cave-in, which traps Shigeru inside the mine with the bugs. And they kind of either presume him dead or they presume him lost.
Mm.
And the next day, the police show up and investigate what was going on, and they a Dr. Kashiwagi, played by the great Akihiko Hirata, the guy who played Dr. Serizawa in the original Godzilla, identifies these giant bugs as Meganulon, an ancient species of dragonfly larvae that had lived on Earth millions of years in the past. An earthquake suddenly erupts in the area, and rumors begin to spread that Mount Aso, the volcano that eclipses this mining village, might be on the verge of another eruption. The police arrive at the base of the volcano to investigate what actually happened due to this earthquake, and there's giant holes that show up in the ground, and practically creating another Grand Canyon. And then they discover Shigeru walking around in the pit, totally amnesiac from a nasty blow to the head, and the doctors are not optimistic that he will recover any of his memory due to how bad it was. But they bring him back to their hospital and do some memory recovery treatment to him anyway. So you want to try it now?
All right. Yes. So I think his fiance, right, gives him like this gift basket with these eggs in it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the eggs hatches, and Shigeru starts getting this like PTSD because apparently, while he was down in the mine, he saw this huge egg hatch with baby Rodan.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I think, that's the first time you actually get to see Rodan.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's the first time you see Rodan in full form. You see its shadow, and you see a snippet of its foot and its wing in a photo. But yes.
Yes. Meanwhile, the Air Force, Japanese and U.S. Air Force, according to the version I watched, have been trying to track this UFO that can change direction at supersonic speed and downed 2 aircraft already.
That's the recurring theme is supersonic speeds.
Yes, and Shigeru like kind of freaks out and like you can continue from there.
Okay, Shigeru does have a triggered flashback when he sees the eggs inside this gift basket hatch, and this is when he regains all of his memory. He remembers who Kyo is, and he reports his findings to what's this guy's name? I'm so bad with Japanese names. Professor Kashiwagi, the paleontologist. He reports his findings to him, and he takes them back inside the area of the mine where Rodan had hatched, and they recover a large piece of eggshell. They bring it back to the mining village, and they run some tests, and deduce that it's the same as a regular chicken egg. It's just a lot bigger. I mean, the thing itself is practically is pretty much this thick. And it's about that big around. It's about as big as a turkey saucer plate. And that's just one piece. That's just one piece. From out of the fractured shell, of course, emerges a gigantic winged creature with a sharp beak and a head like a bird of prey. And when Rodan hatches, it proceeds to eat the rest of the meganeulons like a little bird eating tiny bugs. Shigeru also confirms that yes, what he did see did indeed resemble a pteranodon. And he, let's see.
Ate all the
meganeulons, yes. Yeah. Kashiwagi is able to determine the size of the egg and its age. It's about 200 million years old. Kashiwagi calls a meeting with members of the town along with members of the JSDF, and he tells them of their findings. He tells them that a UFO had been seen flying all over the world at supersonic speeds. Turns out it was actually Rodan, and he also gives the name Rodan, I guess short from Pteranodon, somehow. I always want to say Kawashiri. Kashiwagi theorizes that a nuclear bomb had awakened Rodan from its hibernated sleep, which actually that's one of my little issues with this film. I'm not gonna lie, but I'll get to that when I get to the cons. But he deduces that it was the atomic bomb that had loosened the Earth's crust and opened opened up large cavities that were exposed to the outside air and the outside hot temperatures of the world, and that's what awakened Rodan. Rodan emerges from the ground soon after near Mount Aso, and the creature takes flight and begins to head for Kyushu. But it has a squadron of Japanese fighter planes on its tail. They pursue Rodan and eventually succeed in forcing him into a river by injuring one of Rodan's wings. It smashes inside the river, but it also manages to fly away, but its speed is decreased, and it lands in Fukuoka, where its supersonic windstorms lay waste to the entire city, as well as JSDF. Rodan's attack on Fukuoka is definitely the best part of the film. The special effects are really, really good.
Very great miniatures.
Oh yes, very, very much so. Because Rodan is a smaller kaiju, I can't remember how tall he is. I'm actually gonna look him up. I know he is smaller than Godzilla, like significantly smaller.
40 feet.
Oh God, no. He's larger than that. Let's see. Hang on, just a second, guys. I'm not finding it. Damn it. You're making me look bad here. You want to take over for a little bit while I look it up?
Where'd you leave off of?
The attack on Fukuoka. Let's just go with. Turns out there's 2 Rodans.
Oh yeah. The second Rodan comes out and rips apart buildings and totally annihilates the city, and leaves the rest of the buildings in flames, and the 2 Rodans fly away. And the JSDF try to come up with a plan to attack both the Rodans, and they find that the Rodan's nest is at the base of Mount Aso, and they plan to shell a cave opening and bury the Rodans alive. However, one of the residents doesn't like the plan, and they think it might trigger the volcano and cause it to erupt. And Kitamatsu would be destroyed by the lava and the rock. The military agrees this might happen, but they insist that it is preferable to letting the Rodans escape. And just before the strike is about to begin,
I'd say the same
Shigeru...
thing.
Huh?
I would say the same thing if I was in that situation. You can always regrow trees and landscapes. You can't regrow human lives.
Right. Yeah. Well, would life in that area be sustainable after?
Oh yeah, if areas around volcanic eruptions have been known to quickly recover. Look at the surrounding area around Mount St. Helens. When that place when St. Helens erupted, the landscape around St. Helens has since recovered, and it recovered surprisingly quickly, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, they decide to launch a full-scale attack on Mount Aso, and it turns out to be a success, and they cause Mount Aso to erupt. This forces the 2 Rodans out of their nest. However, the female Rodan is engulfed by all the gases, and it falls upon a river of molten lava, and the male doesn't want to leave its mate, so the male Rodan flies down and lays himself on top of her, and the 2 are engulfed by molten lava, and they proceed to burn to death, thus ending the film.
Is this the only movie where a kaiju commits suicide?
I'd have to get back to you on that one. I'm not entirely sure. Alrighty, so how about this plot? Well, what do you think of this plot?
Well, this movie gave Rodan this humane quality where when its mate is dying, Rodan went to be with its mate as if like it felt love, I guess. And it gave Rodan like a sense of humanity. However, this is like the only time you'll ever see this happen for Rodan's character. Because in all the other movies that has Rodan in it, Rodan is always a monster.
Well, I would definitely say he has his own personality in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, but that's a different Rodan.
Right. This Rodan just is kind of personified, and it has more emotion to him. And I don't know, it kind of makes this movie kind of weird. Because it kind of stands out to the rest of the movies with Rodan in them. And so I don't want to say that it makes me not like this movie, or it would make me not like the other movies, because it would be inconsistent with this movie.
Yeah, I definitely do. There is a couple issues that I have with the Rodans in this film, but overall, this story definitely. If somebody was to say to me, "Oh, it's just a generic giant monster movie," I would say no, not exactly. It definitely has elements of the classic giant monster movie formula in it, especially in the second half of the film. But in the first half of the film, and with Rodan's origin, I definitely say nah. I would say it's pretty original for its time. Even though it definitely takes elements from previous films and kind of meshes them together to make them semi-original. But
right.
But I definitely do think they did a good job. It's very clear, if you ask me, that Ishiro Honda put a lot of effort into this film.
Yes,
early Ishiro Honda, from the original Gojira up until Mothra vs. Godzilla, I definitely think that this was when Ishiro Honda was at his very, very best. Though, granted, he did a couple movies afterwards that I think are very good, but that was actually, I think, more attained to Eiji Tsuburaya, because the main two that I'm thinking of are Frankenstein Conquers the World and Invasion of the Astro Monster. And those movies, I think, are great, but that's mainly just because they have amazing special effects and fun action.
World War II did a number on Ishiro Honda.
Yes, it did.
A recurring theme is nuclear weapons in his movies.
That's actually one of my little like I said earlier, it's one of my little issues with Rodan. But overall, I definitely do think this is one of Honda's best films. Put a lot of effort into it. There's a lot of enthusiasm involved. You could definitely tell on screen, and like I said earlier, this movie really is, almost as much as the original Gojira, a big experiment piece. Because while this wasn't the first giant monster movie made, that's the original Godzilla, this was the first giant monster movie shot in color. And for the record, the color in this movie looks very, very, very good at times. This movie definitely has... You can tell that this was the first color movie in Japan, because there's a lot of scenes in the film where the color has degraded quite a bit. And granted, for this copy specifically...
Even more so in the American version, because the American version has been recut, re-edited.
Miserably.
And, really, really choppy. And because us Americans are very neglectful on international films.
Well, we were back... hello. We were back then. Nowadays, we treat them a lot better, but especially back then, we just didn't give a shit. But I will say this. The Japanese version of Rodan on this disc does look very good, but the American version is just utter crap. It looks utter crap. It's very scratchy.
Is it the version you watched, is that in a anamorphic widescreen? Because the version I had was full frame.
I think it might have been widescreen, but I wasn't sure. I wasn't really paying attention. I don't really pay attention to that kind of thing, but I do think it was widescreen. I could be wrong though.
I hate movies in full frame because when a movie is originally shot in like widescreen,
they try to chop it down.
Widescreen, and then released in full frame, it cuts off like nearly half of the image.
Yeah, that's why I waited to buy a lot of Gamera movies, Showa Gamera movies, on DVD, like legit DVDs, not any of those bargain bin combo DVDs, because they're always horrendously chopped and pan and scanned. Especially Gamera versus Barugan. I remember I bought a 6-pack of the first 6 Showa Gamera movies. I popped in Gamera versus Barugan. Barugan was on the entire screen, and the version I watched had this much of the screen chopped off. So you were looking at Barugan's tail, for example, for a shot. It was horrible. But the American version of Rodan is very scratchy. It's very faded. It has a lot of film grain. It's just very, very... Some shots, I remember, I could barely see what was going on. Even if I had my lights turned off, I could barely see what was going on screen. The American version is horrendously preserved. And unfortunately...
It even looks like it wasn't even digitally remastered from
yeah, I call major
reel.
bullshit.
It looks like it was like right off a VHS tape.
Yes, I agree. Anybody who says that, yeah, we digitally remastered, I just say bullshit. Total bullshit. And unfortunately, that problem is reversed for this version of War of the Gargantuas. The Japanese version is horrendously preserved, yet the American version is crystal clear. At least, part of my knowledge. It's been a while since I've seen War of the Gargantua's American cut, admittedly. But anyways, so aside from that, let's get into the pros and cons of the original Rodan. You want to go first, or you want me to?
I guess I'll go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of my gripes is that it takes a bit for Rodan to actually appear.
Hang on a second. KPF just commented, War of the Gargantuas kicks ass. Please, KPF, save your comments for when you and I get to that film. Oh, man. Okay, go ahead. One of your gripes. It takes a while to get started.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know how much longer the Japanese version is compared to the American version. I know the American versions of monster movies tend to be shortened significantly.
There are some exceptions, but the Japanese version is 82 minutes long. The American cut is like 10 minutes shorter.
Yeah, it was a really short watch. And given that, it takes a bit... It might not be that long compared to the original, but relative to it halfway into the movie, Rodan appears. Mm-hmm. And that's just too long, you know? Like...
Well, I wasn't really bugged with that problem. KPF comments, it seems like the movie will be about the Mega Nulon monster until you randomly see Rodan hatch and eat them. Sort of like, he says, Godzilla 2014 is about the Mutos until Godzilla shows up.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
I never noticed that. Thank you for pointing that out to me.
The main focus is like the Meganolon. And it's just... Well,
it's
very reminiscent of 2014 Godzilla.
I never noticed that, but honestly, I don't really have much of an issue with the first half being kind of slow, because I actually do like the first half of the film with the Mega Nulons. I actually do think that if you... Well, actually, no, it kind of was done, but if you had expanded that into its own... You could expand that into its own movie. I'd love to see an entire movie about a mining village fighting back against an ancient species of insect monsters that are hatched out of the mine. Granted, Patrick Galvin from the Unknown 837 stated that the first half of Rodan is essentially a Japanese version of Them, the giant ant movie from 1954. And I do think it's a bit of a stretch, but I definitely can see where he's coming from.
Yeah, I can kind of get that. Maybe, I think he has more of a giant mantis feel.
I've never seen The Deadly Mantis. I kind of want to, but it just looks... It looks kind of dumb.
Oh, Deadly Mantis is on YouTube. It's in public domain.
Is it really? I am totally going to look that up now. I didn't know it was public domain. Deadly Mantis, 1957. Oh, the MST3K version is on YouTube. I don't like MST3K at all.
Really?
Nope. The only MST3K episode I've ever seen was the episode for let's see, what was it called? Devilfish and Godzilla vs. Megalon. In fact, for a long time, the only way that I could see Godzilla vs. Megalon was the MST3K dub.
You know, for the longest time, people thought Godzilla vs. Megalon and Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster was in public domain.
Nope.
And Toho had a shit fit because it really wasn't.
Nope. Anyway,
yeah.
So, any other gripes that you have with the film before I get to my gripes?
The acting.
Really?
Is okay. Well, okay. When I say acting, I mean like the way how people would react to if this were to happen in real life is a bit comical, if you know what I mean.
I do definitely think it was a little jilted, but
if some people would say like there's like a monster and like people actually got killed, I don't think they would only send one cop. I think they would send like a
they'd send in a whole send in a whole team.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from for there, but I guess it didn't bug me nearly as much. Now that you mention it, yeah, that does come to mind. So any other cons?
Well, the American version, the dubbing is shit. It's so annoying. It doesn't match. And I know it's not supposed to because it's two different languages, but at least time it right, you know?
Yeah, that's why I don't watch dubbed monster movies anymore. In fact, I rarely I'll maybe watch dubbed anime, but if I'm watching a live action for like not just Japanese, but like if I'm watching a martial arts movie from China or Thailand, I will just watch it in its native language because more often than not the dub is just terrible.
Yeah, I wish I could speak Japanese. That way
I do too. I do too, so badly. Oh. Okay, so let me get into my cons. I know I'm kind of going switcheroo, but he started with his cons, so I'll go to my cons first. I'll admit one of my, and again, some of these cons are kind of trivial, but I do want to make light of them because this movie's not going to get a perfect 10 out of 10 rating. I'm just going to say that right now. The color is very faded at times, even on the Japanese version. The stuff shot in the daytime looks fine. It looks fine. It's slightly faded and it's slightly grainy, but you can make out perfectly clear what stuff or the stuff that's going on out. Ugh, God damn it! You can perfectly make out the stuff that's going on screen just fine, and there's no issue seeing what the characters are doing. There's no issue seeing what Rodan is doing. There's no issue watching the destruction scene. you can see all just fine. The stuff during the day looks fine. The stuff when they try to shoot it at night, first off, there's a lot of day for night shots in the first half of the film, and they look pretty damn bad. And I'm not saying that to be like an asshole or anything. They really are bad. It's so dark at times that you can, like, all the people wearing dark uniforms, they just kind of blend together into this moving, morphing mass. And what really gives it away that it is a day for night shot is when people are wearing white uniforms, they look kind of yellowish. And despite it being a day for night shot, they're trying to make it look like it's night. It's clearly supposed to be the day, and it really is distracting, and it is jarring to see somebody in a lighter colored uniform show up in all this mass of black. The stuff that's shot inside the mine is kind of a mixed bag too. They tried to light it better down in there, but there are some shots where all you can see is the yellow miners' helmets and the flashlights going off. You can definitely tell that this was the first color film because the color in this movie is very, very experimental, which I don't harp on it nearly as much as some people do because I am aware that this was the first color film for Toho. I don't think it was the first color film for Toho because I think there was an Akira Kurosawa film that was released in Toho that was in color, but I do know this was the first color kaiju film. And you can definitely tell because it's still very experimental. I do think this movie is, moving on to con number 2, I do think the film is a little too short. That may sound kind of blasphemous for some people, but I do think this movie should have at least been like an hour and 40 minutes long. I do think this movie should have been that long because there's kind of a lot of missed potential here, especially with the Mega Nulons and especially with the Rodan stuff. There's not enough Rodan action in this film, if you ask me. That's not a con though, because what Rodan action we do have is awesome. But I don't think there's enough of the Mega Nulon action. And I just think that overall, when there's action happening, the movie is very quickly paced. But I just do, in generally do think this movie is too short. Where's my pen? God damn it, I lost my pen again.
I thought it would have been cool if they took the Meganolon idea and ran with it and made it so that Meganolon would grow.
I know, right? And they would
Rodan fight him. And if they did do that, it wouldn't be the first movie where two monsters fought each other, because Godzilla Raids Again already had two monsters pitted against each other and fight to the death.
As imbalanced that was.
Yeah. I just thought maybe it could have been cool to see Rodan fight a creature. Specifically the Meganolon.
Not as like the main conflict of the film, but it would have been cool if they did have a small fight with adult Meganulons. Moving on. Another issue that I have with this movie, this could possibly be my biggest problem. Though there's another one that's kind of up there. I don't like the fact that this movie has kind of imbalanced pacing. It has a very solidly paced first act and a very solidly paced third act. But the second act of the film is kind of slow. There's not a whole lot of stuff that happens. And I wasn't bored, but there are times where I was getting kind of antsy in my seat thinking, can something happen, please? So I do think this movie is not perfectly paced. Though, like I said, when there's action happening, the movie is not boring whatsoever. And it moves along at a very brisk pace, which leaves you very entertained. Another con number 4 that I have is that, and this is probably the smallest issue, though I just want to make note of it, is that I think the atomic allegory in this movie is kind of unnecessary. And I say atomic allegory loosely because it's not the main focus of the film. It's just kind of something that was thrown in because Ishiro Honda was writing off his Godzilla high, and he just threw in nuclear weapons are bad. You should not use nuclear weapons. It doesn't specifically say that, but it's hinted at. And I'm just thinking, no, just, come on. It's really unnecessary. I would have much rather preferred if they used a more natural explanation that global warming and these eggs were exposed to the warm air of the surface of the Earth, and that's what. Oh, Big Jack Films is doing a gaming live stream for Star Wars Battlefront 2. Sorry, Jack, I can't come by and say hello. Anyway, I just think the atomic allegory is unnecessary. I would have much rather preferred if it was global warming that caused Rodan to hatch. It was a more natural explanation, but it's not a huge problem, but it is something that I just think, come on, that's not necessary. And possibly another big problem that I have with this movie, this is the last con that I have, why do the Rodans have to die? Why do they have to die? Because it makes no sense.
It's a trend.
I know, it's a terrible trend, which is why I'm so looking forward to seeing The Shape of Water, because the creature from the Black Lagoon doesn't die. And I say, why do they die? Because it doesn't make sense for Rodan's future appearances in the Godzilla series. You could deduce that in Mount Aso, that somewhere around the world that the two Rodans managed to have an egg, but that's not stated. That's never explained. It's never explained how Rodan comes back in later Godzilla movies. In fact, I think they make it implied that it's the same Rodan from this film. I think. I'm not entirely sure. But, sorry about that.
You think maybe they just retconned the idea altogether just to make a cash grab in the later Godzilla films?
I don't think it's a retcon per se, though I just kind of see it as sort of kind of lazy writing, because, like, Ghidorah Three-Headed Monster, for example, was not written by the same guy. I forgot to mention, this was the first Ishiro Honda movie to have Takashi Kimura as its writer. Ghidorah Three-Headed Monster was written by Shinichi Sekizawa, which I think is one of his better scripts. Speaking of which, Rodan, I do think, is tied with Matengo as Takashi Kimura's best script. This is kind of a darker film. It's more of a gritty film. And Takashi Kimura has been known for being kind of he's a very sad, very pessimistic individual who pretty much hated his life. I think the war had a lot to do with why he hated his life, but he wrote like a poet, to quote Adam Noyes, and Omega Picture asks, am I late? No, you're not exactly late, but Takashi Kimura didn't write Ghidorah Three-Headed Monster, so I don't think it was necessarily retconned. I just kind of think it was lazy writing. But I would have been okay if there was like a shot at the end of the movie that shows that there was another Rodan egg, and so that would explain Rodan's future appearances in later films. But I also get the feeling that they didn't have future appearances for Rodan in mind. So again, I just kind of think it's chalked up to lazy writing. So that's all my cons for Rodan. Again, a lot of them are kind of trivial, but there's a couple of them that are pretty substantial. So let's get to the pros of Rodan. Go ahead.
Good action sequences, and very good miniature work, very good special effects. First act with the Meganolon, good. It's good. It should have been its own movie, or they could have expanded on it more, but very good idea that I wish they explored more.
Yep. And I feel like the Meganolon's appearances in Megaguirus is one big homage to the first half of Rodan.
Yeah. Second of all, Rodan's design.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what do you think of this design for Rodan?
I do like, as time went on, like in the Heisei series and the Millennium series, Rodan's design got better and better.
You may surprise some people with that.
Yeah, I know in the later Godzilla movies in the Showa series, they made his eyes bigger and made him look a little more goofy.
I don't like. Okay, I'm gonna say this right now. This, in my opinion, this is the best design for Rodan in the Showa series. I have stated that my favorite design of all time for Rodan is the Final Wars version. But definitely for the Showa series, this design for Rodan is the best. I cannot stand the design for Rodan in the rest of the Godzilla movies. He looks like a pigeon, parrot, pteranodon hybrid. He looks my main issue with Showa Rodan is the goose neck with the pigeon mouth and the parrot eyes.
He looks like a seagull.
That too. That too. Mine.
Mine.
I never thought that. He looks like a fucking seagull. But yes, I don't like. Damn it. Oh, where's my water? Don't make me choke. Jack's already done that. Oh, damn. Fucking pigeon.
Mine.
Okay, so I love this design for Rodan. The first Showa Rodan design is awesome. It kind of looks like a mix of an eagle and a pteranodon. And I really do like that. I love the color.
Is this the first time where, for monster movies in general, where the main focus was a flying monster?
You could say the Giant Claw. Actually, no. Giant Claw, I think you meant... When did the Giant Claw?
Came out in 1957.
Yeah, okay. I think, this was the first flying Japanese kaiju. I'm not sure if there were any other... Okay, oh wait, no. Yeah, I do think this was the first flying kaiju in general.
I really don't, I really don't remember if there were any, maybe just regular dinosaur movies that predate Rodan that had a flying dinosaur in it.
I can't think of any... Oh, okay, no, there was the Pteranodon in the original King Kong.
Oh, yes. But it really wasn't a main focus, and it was stop motion.
Yeah, okay, so for Japan, I'll say this. This was Japan's first flying kaiju. And they certainly pull it off very, very well. Though, again, it is still very experimental because, when I get to special effects, I will say this. There's many shots where you can clearly see the wires holding up Rodan's suit in flight.
Yes.
Though I'll get to why in a few minutes. But overall, I love this design for Rodan. I like its color. It's a very brick reddish color. And it makes him stand out amongst the landscape in a very, very good way.
Looks good on color.
Oh yes, very much so. Rodan looks amazing when he's on screen. When you can see his whole body, Rodan looks amazing on screen.
Yeah.
Any other pros you want to elaborate further?
What do you think of Rodan's roar?
Oh yeah, Rodan's roar. Rodan's roar this is definitely the best Showa version of Rodan's roar. I still prefer Final Wars version, but it pretty much is this. It's just a little more modern. I like it's a very screechy and a very deep screechy sound effect. It sounds more threatening and it sounds more foreboding and it sounds scarier, actually. I would have loved to see this movie in theaters back in the day. Because imagine how loud that Rodan's roar must have come through on the speakers, and it would have just gone through everybody like shit through a goose. I love Rodan's roar in this film. I don't have a problem with Rodan's roar in the rest of his appearances in the Godzilla series. Though it's definitely not as good as in this movie. It sounds a little more high pitched in the rest of his appearances. But still, Rodan's roar in this movie is awesome.
All right. Any other topics we should talk about?
Oh, I got plenty. I got let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 6 pros to talk about. First off, let's talk about the music. Akira Ifukube's music score for this movie is pretty damn good when you can hear it. I actually think Ifukube's score for this movie is very underutilized. A lot of people say that this is some of Akira... Actually, no. A lot of people say this is Akira Ifukube's darkest music score. And while I certainly do agree with that, I don't think it's as memorable as a lot of people make it out to be, because I was really paying attention to the music, and there's the music score is very subdued for a lot of this movie. Rodan's main theme is awesome. You hear it at the beginning of the film, and you hear it throughout various parts of the movie. It is awesome. It's very ominous. It's very in your face. It's very brash. It's very bombastic. It's utterly awesome. And there are moments in this movie where
the music in the American version is stock.
Yes, that does not surprise me in the slightest.
I hate how they do this. I wish they would just... I know music scores have their own set of copyright laws aside from movies.
I'm not even sure if the issue was copyright for the American version of these movies. I just think that the studios either just didn't like it or they wanted to use their own score. Because apparently Henry G. Saperstein wasn't a big fan of a lot of Akira Ifukube's music.
How could he not be? Akira Ifukube is such a great
I don't
composer.
know. I really don't know. It's actually one of the few good things I have to say about War of the Gargantuas is that the score for that film is really, really good. And in the American version of War of the Gargantuas, it's replaced with this generic stock music score that never shuts the fuck up.
Yeah, see, Akira Ifukube is up there with John Williams and James Newton Howard. And
oh yes,
he's very underrated, unfortunately.
Unlike Hans Zimmer, who has just evolved into being completely generic nowadays. Anyway, so the music score overall is very good. Pro number 2 is that I think this movie has a lot of really gorgeous scenery. There's a lot of wide open shots of the mountain landscape during the day, and there's a lot of rolling green hills and blue skies. There's a lot of beauty shots of Mount Aso and a lot of beauty shots of just all these landscapes that are there in the Japanese landscape. It really is very beautiful, and it especially looks very beautiful in color. Because like I said, when anything that's shot during the day really looks good in this film. Especially for this being the first color kaiju movie, a lot of the cinematography and a lot of the scenery shots, they look utterly gorgeous. I wrote down in my pros for number 3 that the characters are great. And actually, I don't think they're great, but I do think they are good. They're not like a cast to a Gamera movie, that's for damn sure. Oh, God. Don't get me started on that, please. But Kenji Sahara does a very good job as Shigeru, especially for this being his first leading role. He's definitely very prototypical for this being his first role, or his first leading role, but he still does a very, very good job. When he plays an amnesiac very, very well. Yes, I know. Omega Pictures says, don't get him started with the Kennys. That's Brendan Tenold. Inside joke.
I like Brandon Tenold.
Yeah, he's cool.
He's
funny. Anyway, so Kenji Sahara plays an amnesiac very well. He has this utter look of being lost, dumbfounded, and confused. Like, on his face. He's totally lost, completely dumbfounded, and he looks blank, completely blank. He does a really, really good job. And when he has his trigger for his flashback, when he sees the egg hatching, his facial expressions are very good. He's seeing all of this shit happen in front of him, yet nothing's there. And he's when it fades back in from the Rodan scene, he's just drenched in sweat, and all of his muscles are taut in his neck and in his hands. And then he sees Kyo, and he recognizes her as Kyo, and then you just see recognition instantly wash over his face. And it's very, very good. Kenji Sahara is a very good actor. And if you ask me, he's probably one of the most underrated Toho actors in existence. He's not my favorite. That honor goes to Yoshio Tsuchiya. But Kenji Sahara certainly is up there. Do you have a favorite Toho actor, by any chance?
Toho act.
Like Akira Takarada, Akihiko Hirata.
I do like Akira Takarada, and
who doesn't?
I didn't really like him that much in Final Wars.
Oh yeah, he was in Final Wars, wasn't he?
Yeah, he played the secretary turned alien.
Yeah. I thought he was kind of cool there, but he was underutilized. That's my only issue with him there.
Yeah. I did like.
Oh, and it's criminal that they deleted his cameo from Godzilla 2014.
Oh, I got so pissed off when I found out that he was in it, but they deleted it. And Gareth Edwards himself said that he regrets it. And I'm just
he should.
Can't they just release an extended version like they've been flirting about? And just put him back in? Please. You know, he was at G-Fest a couple years ago.
I've never been to G-Fest. Don't shoot me.
I've been to G-Fest twice.
You lucky asshole.
And the thing is, the times that I went, the people that went there, the celebrities that showed up weren't really that special. Like Noboru Kaneko from Tokyo SOS, he was there the first time I went, and it was pretty cool to see him. However, he's only in one Godzilla movie. He's more of a TV actor, which I don't even think is even from Toho, because people were asking him about some TV show he was in. He was like a villain.
Big whoop. Big whoop. Also, go on a little brief tangent here. Daniel Wickwire of Kaiju Movie Review apparently has met Haru Nakajima, which, by the way, Haru Nakajima plays Rodan in this movie. He's awesome, of course.
I thought Haru Nakajima was gonna go to the G-Fest that I went to this past year. However, he was sick, and that's why he wasn't there. And I was able to sign that poster that everyone else signed. You know, those Get Well posters.
Mm-hmm.
And then he died. So.
Yeah, I was a little upset when he passed away myself. I was really upset when Yoshio Tsuchiya died. He died in 2015. Yeah. Anyway, so back to that. The characters overall are really very good. The actress who plays Kyo, she does a very good job too. She never leaves Shigeru's side when he's in the hospital, which is really, really good. It goes to show her devotion to him. So she does a good job, and Akihiko Hirata does a really good job as the paleontologist. His name has slipped my mind. Please forgive me, but he does a really good job. It kind of always surprised me that after Dr. Serizawa, Akihiko Hirata never played a main character in any movie any Godzilla movie or kaiju movie that he was in later on. He was always a supporting character. You could also say Terra Mechagodzilla. He played a main character, which he did, but he wasn't the main character. He was the main. He was a central character, and that's the closest he ever got to Dr. Serizawa again. But other than that, he always played supporting roles, and in every single one, even in King Kong vs. Godzilla, he's great. Akihiko Hirata is probably my third or fourth favorite Toho actor. And speaking of which, the acting overall from the rest of the cast is very solid. There's just not much to say about them. The characters, they do their part. They have good dialogue. Their acting is decent. Like there's no Gamera child character acting in this movie. Overall, it is very, very solid. I actually do really like the first half concerning the Mega Nulon. I think, like you said, yes, I wish that it was expanded upon in its own movie, but what we do have, it is very, very good. It's very, very enjoyable. And the last pro that I have to say is that the special effects are damn fine.
Top-notch.
Yes, and I found out, actually, Showa Rodan is as tall as Showa Godzilla. He's 50 meters in height.
Really?
I actually didn't know that because the miniatures are very well constructed. Very, very, very well constructed. They're very detailed. They look awesome when they're destroyed.
I wonder what they're made of, because I've always tried looking into how they made miniatures, and it's been kept such a fucking secret.
I think a lot of it is just wooden models and some clay models and not plastic, but just various breakable materials that are easily breakable. I wouldn't be surprised if they also literally use a lot of miniature sets, like for toys to destroy.
Yeah.
But I've always wondered that too. But the miniatures are very, very well constructed. They're very well detailed. They look great. Heisei Rodan is actually 70 meters in height, Omega Pictures. Anyway. Hang on a second. Sorry. The Rodan suit itself is very, very well constructed. You can definitely tell it was slimmed down quite a bit in comparison to Godzilla, the Godzilla suit from the original film. You can definitely tell Hiro Nakajima had an easier time maneuvering around in it than the original Godzilla suit, because they had made a fair amount of suits at this point, so they kind of had their art not completely smoothed out, but it was a lot less clunky than it was in the original Gojira.
I know that Haruo Nakajima went through hell and back just to play Godzilla, especially in the first movie.
In the original movie, it was the suit itself was very, very, very stiff because it was a new.
Yeah.
The material they used to make the suit in the original film, it was a new material at the time, so they didn't know how to cure it. It was very, very stiff, and it was rough. The material inside the suit was rough. And he sweated a lot, so he would get numerous abrasions and sores. More than a cup of sweat will be poured out of the suit after each take. And with the combined fires on the set, as well as hot studio lights, it easily reached 130 degrees inside the suit, resulting in Hiro Nakajima passing out quite often on set. And if you look at the original,
now here comes the Rodan suit, and he has to. Now Rodan's a flying monster, so he has to maneuver while he's flying around. And I wonder if he had a blast.
No doubt. But actually, there's a little bit of a story. Apparently, when they were trying to, when he was inside the suit, and the first take where they're trying to have him take off from the river, a wire snapped, and he fell 25 feet. And he went kerplunk on the ground. What saved him were the wings of the suit, because they absorbed a lot of the shock from the suit because they were so big. That actually saved his life. He would have been seriously hurt. If not, he would have died on set if he fell that height without those wings. Those wings saved his life.
Damn. damn, like, he's inside the suit. He can't tell what's going on, and all of a sudden he can feel himself dropping.
Like, Haruo Nakajima at that time, I'm sure he weighed at least 160 pounds. And the suit itself probably weighed maybe 80, 90, maybe 120 pounds. And I want to say this, too. I give it a break for how noticeable the wires are. Because if they were too thin, they would have snapped and things would have happened. Bad things would have happened.
Right.
So I give them a break for having the wires be noticeable because they had to be of a certain thickness so they'd be strong enough to hold up the weight of the suit and Haruo Nakajima.
Well, they could have painted them like Ray Harryhausen did.
Yeah, but the thing is with a lot of these Toho movies that they had really rushed production schedules. Like, you'll learn more about that when I get to Atragon, for example. But a lot of times they have really rushed production schedules, so they wouldn't have had time to paint the strings. And don't get me wrong, I agree with you. But Ray Harryhausen had the privilege of time on his hands. These guys didn't. So the Rodan suit is very well constructed. The wings are huge. Like, the wings are the first thing that you look at concerning Rodan. He just totally fills up the screen when he's on there. I like his chest. It's very, very... It looks like an armored shell, which I really do like. Overall, this Rodan just absolutely looks great in this movie. The suit looks great. It's well constructed. You can definitely tell it's a lot more flexible than the Godzilla suit. Overall, it looks great. The explosion effects are very well done. The fire looks great in this movie. What really destroys Fukuoka is not specifically Rodan himself, but when fires ignite and he's flapping his wings all over the place, the wind effect carries the fire all over the city, causing it to burn. Basically, it's like it's a snowball effect of sorts. Yeah. So overall, the special effects are great, and this is a great movie overall. So I want to wrap up our thoughts here. So what are your final thoughts on Rodan?
Well, I'm sure the original Japanese version is significantly better than the American version, but
it is.
I'll give the American version a 6.5
out of 10.
Yeah.
I do enjoy this movie. It's sadly not one of my favorites anymore because this isn't really like a con or anything, but this is something I want to take note of, is that this movie doesn't have a whole lot of rewatchability, if you ask me. Not nearly as much as the original Gojira. Like, the original Gojira, I watch maybe 2 or 3 times a year. If that. Rodan, I can see myself watching a little more often, but I actually enjoy Gojira more than Rodan. But I think Rodan has a little more rewatchability because it's a shorter film. It's not as deep as Gojira. And just Rodan is a whole different beast of a film. But this movie doesn't have a whole lot of rewatchability. Though I'll save that for when I review Matango. Because holy shit, Matango. Overall, I'm not going to give this movie a perfect 10. Like I said earlier, it's not a 10 out of 10 film. I'm sorry. But I will give this film a 9 out of 10. It's a very good film. For it being as experimental as it is, it definitely gets a lot of things right. But there's still moments where you can see that it is an experiment piece and it starts to stumble a little. But overall, for a first-time type of project, it still is very, very well done. It's very well executed. It is a very well-made film, and it gave birth to one of Toho's most classic kaiju, Rodan, being one of Toho's big 5. Godzilla, Rodan, King Ghidorah, Mechagodzilla, and Anguirus. So.
In Godzilla 2, 2019.
Oh yeah, that's right. Rodan will also be making his next appearance in Godzilla King of the Monsters in 2019. I hope he's not the villain. Like, I really hope he's not the villain. I wouldn't have an issue with him fighting King Kong, but I hope he's one. Okay, he probably will fight Godzilla first, but I do hope he becomes an ally of Godzilla's.
My main concern is that Rodan in the Godzilla movie his design would remain truthful to the original Rodan, because if they stray away from Rodan's original design and make him more bird-like.
If I see Rodan with feathers, I am gonna be pissed. Oh my god.
That would suck.
Yes. Alrighty, so thank you very much, Movie Buff Productions, for joining me in reviewing this beast of a film.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I had a blast.
Not a problem whatsoever. Well, we'll have him once again when I review H-Man and Battle in Outer Space and Frankenstein Conquers the World. So he's going to be a recurring guest for my Honda-thon. So, post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this video with your friends. Look forward to episode 2 of my Honda-thon, where I review the, in many of its own ways, experiment piece film, 1957's The Mysterians, also directed by Shiro Honda, of course. Share this video with your friends, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Say bye, Movie Buff.
Bye, guys. See you later, movie fans.